You are listening to Methods Build What's Next Digital Product Perspectives, presented by GlobalLogic. We have a special episode this week. Recently, our parent company, GlobalLogic, was ranked as a leader in ISG's first Generative AI Services report. So on the heels of that industry recognition, we wanted to share a conversation between GL COO Sumit Sood and Gowtham Sampath, the lead analyst for Gen AI at ISG. In this episode, Gowtham shares his observations on the space and why GL's services stand out and deliver tangible and transformative outcomes across the industry. They also discuss the evolution of generative AI in software development and GlobalLogic Velocity AI, GL's comprehensive suite of AI-powered service offerings. Velocity AI, which was just recently launched, is shaping the future of AI-driven engineering. And so if you're interested in learning more about the intersection of AI, digital, and human expertise, you're in the right spot. So without any further ado, let's jump in.
Hi, good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. And most of you who have been following GlobalLogic in the media or on our social handles would have heard about our ranking recently as one of the leading providers in artificial intelligence solutions and consulting services worldwide in the ISC report that just came out. And I'm privileged to have over here with us Gowtham Sampath, who is the ISC lead analyst for Gen AI and analytics and cybersecurity. Welcome, Sampath.
Thank you very much. Thanks for hosting us today. It's a pleasure.
And we are here, we're going to talk about Sampath and I were exchanging some thoughts and ideas around this topic. And we said, hey, why not have a conversation and see if there is some good that comes out of it that we can leverage for our worldwide followers, employees, customers, if any nuggets that can be used across, why not? And hence this conversation, hence this podcast. And looking
Awesome.
forward to this conversation, Sampath. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting us.
Sampath, talk to me a little bit about your own journey. So you are in a hotspot right now, right? You're
Yes.
analytics, AI, cybersecurity. That's like the hotspot in the world.
It's a good combination of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you have data and analytics is more important foundation for a lot of things, and then cybersecurity. That's again another important piece. Security, privacy, governance, quite a lot of things. And then with the onset of Gen AI, I think it was much more of a natural transgression for me to move to generative AI. And the journey has been really good. We met with more than 78, let's just say 80 plus providers. And I think out of all that providers, GlobalLogic was one of the key highlights that we recognized as a leader in the generative AI services report. So I've been with ISG for about a little more than 4 years now, 4.5 years now. And generative AI report is probably one of those reports where I think the standout is so good in terms of the market perception as well as in terms of the overall topic as such.
Wonderful. Thanks, Gautam. And you touched upon a very interesting thing, right? You said data and analytics is like the foundational things. And we at GL have had that belief for a long, long time. We have been working in the AI space for a little over a decade now. And in fact, we went live with our first generative AI-based solution back in 2021, before the hype, like I call it. This is for
before even people knew the word generative AI.
Yes. And this was for a healthcare provider of research and clinical solutions, for them to generate documentation based on the research documents, the clinical data, and so on and so forth. And we have always believed that the bedrock of AI is data, right? And not just having data, but then figuring out how to identify, define, and train models to be able to leverage the data to deliver intelligence out. And that's
Right.
really been our journey. And at this point in time, as we ourselves take a pivot and say, how do we make this more and more mainstream? And we've been at AI for more than a decade, at generative AI for more than 3 years, at analytics for much longer than that. We have really been focused on integrating design, engineering, and data science for creating more and more impactful and meaningful solutions. And sitting inside the Hitachi ecosystem, sitting inside the Hitachi umbrella, and that vast knowledge and data and expertise around industries and domains, that gives us a brilliant opportunity to A, learn, and B, to take that out to our customers, as well as work with our partners to then build on top of that, right? And take it out for really creating some meaningful impact in the society around us. And I would love to hear from you, given this backdrop, a little bit more about your evaluation process? Why did our approach stand out? What did you folks think when we responded with all of this?
Absolutely, absolutely. So even before the start of the actual analysis, we had a consensus that the market is quite unique in the sense there are a lot of providers. We need to think about who does what. I mean, there are providers that claim, they do things with GitHub and then they do things with co-pilots and then call themselves as AI service providers. So you need to be able to clearly articulate and you need to be able to clearly define the boundaries. And that's one of the reasons why we had to segment the market into large, mid-size, and specialists. So the mid-size segment is where we have positioned GlobalLogic as one of the rightmost leaders. And one of the key characteristics of that particular segment is that the mid-size providers, even though they are small in scale or size, they're very strong with a couple of aspects. One is their core digital engineering practice that they bring to the table. And when we think about digital engineering, it is not just about creating software. It's about a blend of things. It's about mixing the right set of people, process, and technology. And you need to have a little bit of a forward-thinking thought process within you in order for you to get to that level. And besides that, I think one of the other key characteristics is a very strong focus in 3 or 4 verticals, not beyond that. And I think that focus gives them a very good opportunity in terms of creating very specific domain-centered capabilities. And I think that's one of the reasons why we thought GlobalLogic stood out. And I think you mentioned a couple of points there as well, that, the Hitachi background that you mentioned about. I think there is a good blend of, let's say, engineering and the data foundations that you mentioned about. And this kind of a mix when it comes with an industry background where it is, where other providers are not able to provide us certain things, let's say from a manufacturing background, from, let's say, utility or transportation. These were the kind of references that GlobalLogic was able to provide to us. And that helped us understand that, you're not the typical service provider that claims to be in the AI space, but you're doing something. And besides that, I think we also had a couple of more points in terms of, I think, the investment that has gone into creating the platform of platforms, the POP developed by GlobalLogic. I think that's one of those fantastic platforms. While a lot of other service providers also claim platforms, right? What we felt which was unique about POP was that it has a very good modular structure in terms of its entire framework. And it helps in terms of end-to-end, right from assessment to the end, as well as, create that continuity in terms of the model churn and other things. But at the same time, through the explanation in terms of how it was devised and how it was conceived, what we were able to understand was this probably is one of those unique elements of GlobalLogic where you're able to, let's say, industrialize enterprise-grade AI systems. And the reason why we want to call it enterprise-grade AI is because of your background with Hitachi. And I think that comes from there.
Fair. No, thank you for that. And yeah, I mean that's something that we believe has a lot of potential. Something that we are looking forward to continue learning more and more from the Hitachi ecosystem on. So that would be brilliant. I think as this story unfolds down the line, that would be brilliant. Talk to me, Gautam, a little bit more about how do you see GenAI's role in SDLC? What do you see? Look, there's a lot of hype. There's some reality. There's a lot of reality. Some hype. What's your lens? What's your perspective?
Our take is SDLC is definitely one of those areas that is consistently growing. A lot of providers are getting into that space. But when you take SDLC as such, and start breaking it down into different parts, let's say we start off with prototyping. A lot of other providers do the regular kind of prototyping, there is the standard approaches to it. But then what we see, at least in the market, where again we felt GlobalLogic has already started doing that, is in the kind of the kind of predictive related prototyping, or prototyping where you can actually have a sense of what you're building, that you will be able to see it more or less in a visual format. So that helps you to actually start governing the entire process right from the beginning. And then when you think about, let's say, the next step is probably coding. A lot of people generate, a lot of providers generate code. They also generate quite a few transitions from or migrations from one code to another. But what we are feeling that is more important in the market is, let's say, creating recommendations at that point in time. Recommendations in terms of, what libraries to choose, what sort of APIs, what sort of strategies would work. And I think that's where the POP fits in a little bit more nice.
Correct.
And if you think about the testing phase as well, there is a lot of automated generated testing that happens, and there is quite a lot of automated related stuff, but that is all automation. What we feel where testing can go is again in terms of predictive testing. Something that would allow the tester to even, let's say, think about or to even expect what might go wrong and how can you figure that out even before. How can generative AI help in that? That is another area which has just started growing. And debugging, again, there's a lot of code documentation and other things that are happening. But again, even in debugging, we feel that finding out the root cause as well as finding out or thinking about how to, recommend what sort of bug fixes can help. Here again, I think we saw a couple of examples from GlobalLogic. So I think that SDLC is one of those areas where we definitely think that I think close to about 60% of your use cases had some level of SDLC strength in it.
Correct. And you've touched a very important point, Gautam. The way we are looking at software development, if you will, is in three buckets, right? Which is the human only way or the human centric way, right? Which still applies to, as an example, FUSAF compliant components in automotive or Class C medical devices in medtech, where you would want, where the regulation still prohibits the use of AI at a meaningful level, as an example, right? That portion will continue. Then we look at what we call as human-centric AI-enabled. And I think that's where most of the world is today.
Yes.
But we're also starting to look forward and say, what is AI-centric and human-enabled? Which is you actually have an AI-native way of thinking about software, eliciting those requirements and building out those systems end to end, which is more AI driven and human aided, or the machines being aided by humans to build that software out. And if you look at the middle bucket where most of the world is today, we actually have for this step 2 and 3, which is human centric AI enabled, AI centric human enabled, velocity.ai, which is our take on applying AI. We've done some fairly meaningful work in that area. And what velocity.ai actually ends up offering is, like you mentioned with the POP, it's a great flexibility. You get to choose the right architecture types. You're not boxed into that this is only where you do things. You have your own architectures, you have your own APIs. What do you want to integrate with? What SDKs, what IDs, etc. It's very flexible, very IP secure, right? How do you make sure that the data models or your source code, all of that stuff, or if you're throwing in your prompts, I mean, prompts are beginning to become IP as well, right?
Yeah.
How do they live and survive in an IP secure manner?
Right.
And then end to end, right? So flexible, IP secure, end to end. That's really the value proposition that our Velocity AI Workbench offers, which is choose different LLMs, get things done, and really start to drive anywhere between 5 to 30% productivity basis what phase of SDLC it is in. And we are looking at this as a fairly integrated workbench, not a bespoke. You do this in requirements, then you do this for testing, you do this for coding. It's actually a fairly integrated workbench that allows you to go end to end in your SDLC. And that, we believe, is something that will grow and prosper over the next couple of years and slowly graduate or start transitioning to, initially maybe at a subcomponent level, but things that could get done more by machines and then by humans. You talk to a AI bot explaining what do you imagine in that system, and the bot says, hey, you know what, your system has aspects or features that need billing, it has aspects or features that need multi-level catalogs, it has aspects or features that need this type of user experience, and hey, by the way, here are some global best practices, here are things that you should be thinking about in the system, and actually enriches or comes up with requirements that describe what software should be generated, whether by humans or by machines. And I think that's where we are headed, and we are excited at GL because while we are doing this Velocity.ai Workbench today, which is addressing the here and now, we are now beginning to invest into the future and saying, how do we do more and more GenAI native capability of being ready for GenAI native software development? And I think that's something that
I think based on what you just explained about Velocity AI, I think I'm already starting to see how the POP would have been the foundation stone for
yes.
because at least during our conversations, I think three things came up very nicely. One was the let's say the ability for improved flexibility. I mean, irrespective of whether it is a model or architecture or whatever the algorithm is, it allows for that flexibility to be used by the enterprise users. I think that is really good. Now, while some of the other providers will definitely have a list of models to choose from, what beyond that? What else can you do? Choosing a model is no longer it's become a commodity more or less today. What else can you do? And I think the second aspect is something that I really liked. And when you mentioned about the entirety of the holistic nature of the Velocity AI as well, I think you have a very single plane of control in terms of how the visibility or the observability or how governance can be laid on top of it. I think that again will reflect more here as well, the way that you're explaining. So I think if these things start coming together, and the way when you're thinking about moving into the future as well, right? We are already thinking about how far this might closely be to, let's say, agentic frameworks and other aspects of it.
Correct.
Like yesterday or day before yesterday, there was a concept in medium.com where they were talking about agentic mesh already, a system of autonomous agents. And it will no longer be a system where you have to necessarily create something like what you mentioned about the software, the ability of a software to create itself, but it will be more about how can you embody that agent, multiple agents, the autonomous agents that are running. How can you create an ecosystem within that, and how can you make sure that they talk to each other, and how will you be able to control it and keep a human in the loop in all of that?
Wonderful. And
is this where GlobalLogic is already thinking about?
We actually are. Look. Having agentic solutions, but then really beginning to orchestrate these, how do I say, silo agents or points agentic solutions into enterprise workflows. So concepts like chain of thought, tree of thought, are things that are centered or that are front and center of our thinking, trying to figure out how do we, because each of these agentic solutions would have their own probably SLM or micro LLM, whatever you call it, which would be very specific to that particular problem set or domain. But for an enterprise, then you would need to orchestrate a cohort of these to build something meaningful. So yes, we are beginning to think on these. We have, how do I say, a combination of partnerships,
right,
as well as some customers with whom we are building GenAI native products and solutions that actually enable this in the enterprise.
So when you say building with them, are you collaborating, building with?
We are their engineering partners. We're their engineering providers.
Okay.
Right. And there are, I mean, I can't take that name, but as an example, there's a very strong leading middleware provider. And their next version of their product is actually getting more and more GenAI centric. And it is truly GenAI, not just AI, because it can crawl through the enterprise and figure out what are all the integration hubs that I need to generate and create that framework. And then once you have that framework and tapestry, then you can start to orchestrate these point solution agents across that and work through that. It's a very exciting space that that we are seeing.
I think that's another standout as well for GL. Yeah. So when we asked a set of questions, choose your priorities based on certain things in terms of what you want to achieve in generative AI, we gave options around LLMs and LLM ops and certain other things, out of which middleware was also one of those components. I think probably you and one other provider wants to choose that as the priority, number one priority. And I think how it resonates in terms of, how you've built POP and then you're moving to certain other things.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, we are thinking, so we're looking at it two ways, right? One is we're looking, how do I say, future forward as well, present forward as well, and future back as well, right? We're trying to look forward and say, hey, if that is where the point of arrival is, what should we be doing today? And we're saying, if we are here today, what do we need to get there? So both we're trying to intersect, and everything is happening at warp speed, as you can imagine.
Absolutely.
And I think that's also something we fundamentally think that in this ecosystem, for firms to be truly successful and truly make an impact, there's a combination of or a trifecta of factors that would apply. One would be very strong technical capability,
right,
or technology harness, and the technology harness could be enterprise's own harness or a service provider harness or off the shelf. That will evolve, right? We have multiple such stacks and options that are available out there. I think the second critical one would be the ability to leverage data for training models. I think that the power of or the complexity of applying data to models has still not dawned upon most of the enterprises, and that's the reason why you see 70 to 80% of the effort in enterprises still sitting in sort of POC stage, right? I mean, POC grade productivity is like 20-30% gains, but then when you take it out at scale, it drops down to 5, 7, 10, 12%.
Right.
And that's because of the sheer amount of data effort that it takes, or effort that it takes to massage the data into the right semantics and syntactics, if you will, for training the model. And once you have that, then you start to really get those 20-30%. And then the third aspect of it is domain models and industry solutions, right? Saying that, hey, I know that for, as an example, the rail industry, if you look at parameters A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H and apply these, you can actually reduce rolling stock time in the maintenance yard by 5%. And then that translates to this many hundreds of millions of dollars of OPEX during the course of a 1 year, 5 year window. And I think those are the three powerful things. And 1 and 2 is something that we at GL have standalone expertise and experience. And we are partners to 2 of the world's largest LLMs at this point in time on helping build those LLMs, helping train those LLMs with a very, very, very large workforce and solutions. And the third piece around domain and industries, the Hitachi ecosystem, and sitting inside that, I think that's the ability to learn from that ecosystem. That's what's very, very exciting for us. And I think that's what we believe differentiates GL in this ecosystem.
Absolutely. I think that's where our analysis also shows that, when we think beyond just the portfolio, the kind of competitiveness that a provider can bring in to the table. I think what you mentioned is Hitachi. I think it is an ecosystem in itself, ecosystem of ecosystems. So when you have, gathered experience from there, I think it's obviously going to reflect in terms of your competitiveness when you go to market.
Well, yeah, and absolutely. And we at GL are very committed, along with Hitachi's support, to continue building on this technology foundation that we have, to continue building on this data and domain foundation that we have. We are now beginning to roll out the platform across our customers, across various Hitachi business units, and incrementally seeing how do we take those domain models in an IP secure way, and how do we make sure that every incremental iteration is something that creates a more powerful solution, more powerful hotbed. And that's something that we want to continue doing. We're continuing to innovate. We're continuing to invest. And this is, I think, the single biggest focus area for pretty much all of GL. Well, thank you, Gautam, for this engaging discussion. I love hearing your insights. And again, thank you for the recognition that
No, absolutely. I think it was a pleasure listening to GlobalLogic. I think we got a lot of learning for this is the first time that ISG is doing this report as well. So there was a lot of learnings. And I think, as I said, there were good standouts. And I think those standouts help the industries as well as when we go to enterprises. They will know who the right partner is in their transformation journey towards AI.
Thank you for joining us on Build What's Next, Digital Product Perspectives. If you would like to know more about how Method can partner with you and your organization, you can find more information at method.com. Also, don't forget to follow us on social and be sure to check out our monthly Tech Talks. You can find those on our website. And finally, make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on any future episodes. We'll see you next time.